Have you ever heard the words, "Don't FF, we outscale"? Because I have, and I've probably heard it a few too many times actually. What is up, summoners, and welcome back to another ProGuides video. My name is Zyrene, and I will be your host for this video. Now, I know a lot of you guys are actually going to love this one. We're going to cover 10 champions who never lose in the late game. Not literally, but you get the point. These champions are so incredibly strong in the late game, so especially for you guys that find that your games stall out to 5 or 6 items, I'd give these guys a shot. We're covering champions across every role, so make sure that you stay tuned to find out who our analysts suggest for you guys. And for our question of the day though, what champion is way too strong for your elo? Personally, I think Karthus is absolutely insane. Anytime he manages to pick up a kill, he starts one-shotting my entire team, and unfortunately, it feels like anytime the game stalls out versus him, it's about the same thing except he gets to press R and scores an easy pentakill. Let me know what your answers are in the comments below. Now, let's get started with the video. Alright, let's start with the top lane.
Me split push, me 1v9, no talk,
has never been more true with one particular champion, and it's none other than Jax. Of course, Jax is an absolute monster in the late game. Oftentimes he feels unkillable, he nearly one-shots most squishies, and he's so incredibly difficult to deal with as a result. If that didn't make things worse, how do you even expect to 1v1 a guy that can do all of that? Jax is relatively mobile as well, meaning that shutting him down isn't exactly the easiest thing either. Most of the time, sending multiple members at him might not even be the right solution. He's so strong in duels that he can pick up easy 1v2 victories a majority of the time. We all know it as a fact, Jax is one of the scariest devils to play against in the top lane, and every minute that passes tightens the stranglehold he has over games with his immense split pushing power and team fighting pressure. Next up is none other than the notorious queen of the late game, Kayle. Level 16 power spike is real with this girl, as she becomes so incredibly powerful with it. Fun fact, did you know that the bonus damage from the waves Kayle creates with her flame basic attacks can crit? Not that many players really build crit on her at the moment, but it's definitely some food for thought. Maybe if they threw the jeweled gauntlet from TFT onto Summoner's Rift, we'll see Kayle become an extremely threatening pick. But nevertheless, Kayle provides a similar form of pressure that Jax does. Like him, she's an incredible split pusher, but an even more devastating team fighter. Kayle has some of the highest damage output imaginable in the late game, and her ultimate is also one of the most game-changing, as she can either grant an ally or herself temporary invulnerability. Especially when games revolve around taking out a specific single target in the later stages of the game, this ultimate is easily one of the most decisive factors in late game team fights. Kayle's only responsibilities early on are to survive and farm up, because once the late game comes around, she literally has it all. Insane damage and utility as well. In a way, she's kind of like Senna, a utility carry that can honestly out DPS a lot of champions that are built specifically to deal damage. It goes without saying that we also need to shout out Nasus as well. This guy has been killing it on Summoner's Rift, and the infinite scaling on his Q means that if you let games drag out against him, well, you're in some real trouble. Cue the "call an ambulance, but not for me" memes, because this guy might take a beating during the early game, but somehow he always manages to come out absolutely jacked in the late game and proceed to 1v9. Since we mentioned some infinite scaling, we also have to shout out our boys Sion and Cho'Gath. While they might not be as terrifying as a 50-minute game Nasus, these guys continue to get tankier and tankier as the game progresses. Eventually, they end up becoming unkillable titans, who are also incredibly impactful in the late game. All these picks are super obvious, but we felt more like highlighting picks that spike around 25 to 30 minutes, since the 50-minute fantasies aren't always attainable. Check out the screen one more time, guys, because that's going to wrap up those top lane builds. Take note of those one last time, because we're about to be talking about junglers. No surprises here, Karthus made it onto the list. Another one of those press R to win champions, you know? Karthus deals insane amounts of damage, and the best part is that killing him isn't the end of his ridiculous onslaught. Karthus's passive grants him an immense amount of strength, as he can literally dive into the enemy team, give up his life, and still continue to carry fights by spamming Q on his opponents, and casting a Beyond the Grave ultimate to finish things off. With how spammable Karthus's Q is as well, players oftentimes don't realize how much neutral objective pressure he also provides. He melts Baron as well as the Elder Dragon with his unmatched single target damage, and late game Karthus forces his opponents to walk on eggshells at all times. Accidentally taking some damage and flashing out with some HP left to spare just isn't enough versus this guy, because you know that Karthus player is ready to smash that R key down and joyously type "outplayed" in all chat right after. It goes without saying that Karthus easily leads damage charts in most games when they're on the enemy team. But all the jokes aside, I'm telling you guys that this guy is definitely not a joke. Put infinite scaling on a champion and you've got a real late game problem. Although Kindred's scaling does have a cap, it's not very often that you'll see her hit 25 stacks of her passive. In spite of this, the potential to hit 750 attack range as such a mobile marksman is still quite threatening. Kindred is a marksman, meaning she has an incredibly powerful late game, and of course on top of this, she has one of the strongest ultis in the game as well. And what's stronger than preventing yourself or an ally from dying? Well, what about saving all of your teammates? You can come in clutch, saving your allies from Karthus ultis even, or any AoE damage coming your way. Unfortunately, you can save your enemies too, but there needs to be some balance in there, right? Mobility becomes more and more valuable as games drag on, and having one of the most mobile marksmen on your team should definitely give you a sense of late game relief. Alright, that's going to cover our jungle picks, so take a look at the screen one last time for those builds. Now, let's head over to the mid lane next. Our first mid lane pick is none other than Vladimir. No matter what happens, as long as Vladimir is able to get some gold and finish items, he's one of those guys that's absolutely insane to have on your team in the later parts of the game. Vladimir is the champion everyone is afraid of in the late game because he one-shots literally everyone. Anytime his flash is off cooldown, you're in kill range. On top of this, Vladimir is rather tanky and is also able to stall for a ton of time with the combination of his W as well as Zhonya's. Now, due to his sustain as well, it's pretty tricky trying to prevent Vladimir from scaling up. Even after winning trades against him in lane, he's able to spam Q on minions and gain back some of his health. Then he continues to farm some more, and suddenly he's 6 items and then the game is over. What makes Vladimir so strong is the fact that he's able to single out a target he wants to burst down while also dealing an insane amount of AoE damage with his E and his R. Vladimir's low cooldowns in the late game allow him to wipe out entire teams, and he's definitely one of the hardest late game carries on Summoner's Rift. Next up is Kassadin. I don't think this pick is a surprise to any of you. Kassadin is the most mobile mid laner in the game with his 2-second cooldown on Riftwalk in the late game. Every 2 seconds he can blink forward or away, and he's essentially a champion that's impossible to catch, and even worse, a champion that's impossible to run away from. The fact that he can one-shot most champions makes him an even scarier late game threat. Now admittedly, Kassadin's early game isn't the best, but it's only fair because of how ridiculously stacked his late game is. It's nearly impossible to answer late game Kassadin because of how much power he holds. He's one of the tankier AP champions as well because his itemization simply allows for it. He'll have some more health, and he'll also have a Zhonya's Hourglass most of the time, meaning he can dive in, and if he doesn't like where he's found himself, he's able to enter stasis and reassess the situation for a bit. Once it ends, well, he can still jump forward and one-shot someone on your team. We also want to make an honorable mention to Veigar. It's pretty difficult for him to reach the late game fantasy, but nevertheless, he's a mid laner with infinite scaling. Even after finishing 6 items, he continues to grow stronger and stronger. Eventually, he one-shots literally everyone, and I can confirm this because I've seen plenty of 1200 AP Veigars delete my carries with his ultimate. Now, that's it for the mid laners, so we're throwing those builds up on your screen for you guys one last time. Now, let's head onto the bottom lane. I absolutely adore and love Vayne. She's so fun to play, and she's coincidentally an amazing late game pick. Although her attack range is quite average, her mobility is easily the cream of the crop. She's able to reposition herself every few seconds, and if she's using her ultimate, she gains stealth every time she does so. As a result of this, Vayne is able to safely dish out damage that most marksmen wouldn't be able to. Vayne's insane late game damage, coupled with the fact that she's so incredibly difficult to catch, make her one of the best late game carries in the game. Admittedly, she might not win an all-out fight as well as some other hyper carries. However, the fact that she's so mobile and able to protect herself is a fair trade-off considering the fact that she's really not that much weaker than other hyper carries. And speaking of hyper carries, we definitely have to mention Kai'Sa. The reason Kai'Sa is so powerful is because, like Ezreal, she's extremely difficult to just pin down. Like Ezreal, Kai'Sa is able to lower the cooldown on her E, but instead by landing basic attacks. Although she can't jump through walls with her E, having a speed boost that also stealths you is quite nice. Kai'Sa does, however, have her ultimate, which allows her to reposition herself and also grants her a sizable shield, and these 2 abilities allow Kai'Sa to keep herself alive while also dishing out insane amounts of damage. Unlike most other marksmen, Kai'Sa is able to commit to either physical or magic damage builds, so she can round out practically any type of damage split. On top of this, Kai'Sa's W is an excellent poking tool as well, especially after the recent buffs where its cooldown refund on hit was increased significantly. It's quite feasible for her to spam this ability with some more AP-centric builds. One last time, guys, here are those bottom lane builds for you to check out. Take a screenshot, save these, do whatever you need because we're about to wrap things up with the supports. Free wins are music to my ears, so what better way to express this than through Sona? This aura spamming enchanter is one of the strongest late game supports in the game. Sona's low cooldowns and the diverse set of utilities she can provide make her a champion who hard carries late game by literally face rolling on the keyboard. Basically, the longer she lives, the more value she's able to provide. If fights are slower, she's able to constantly spam her abilities and provide more assistance to her teammates. And the fact that her auras apply to all allies in range means that she's able to assist every single one of them at the same time. Most supports focus on targeting a single ally with their abilities when they're trying to give them a helping hand, but that's not the case with Sona. She goes wide with her utility in the sense that she's able to simultaneously support every single one of her teammates. And like we already mentioned, she's able to provide health, damage, and movement speed. And our final pick has to be Senna. Unlike Kindred, Senna's scaling has no ceiling. The longer the game drags out, the worse it gets for Senna's opponents. You'd like to think that after 6 items, the growth element of the game comes to a halt, but with Senna, it really doesn't. Her range and damage can both continue to increase well beyond finishing her entire build. Like we mentioned with our 2 marksmen in the bottom lane, range and safety are extremely important, and Senna actually has a bit of both. The fact that Senna's range continues to grow as she gathers more and more miss rates means that she can potentially outrange every other champion in the entire game, given enough time. On top of this, her E, Curse of the Black Mist, allows her to shroud herself and her allies. This provides some unique utility that's quite invaluable. On top of her insane damage and range, Senna also provides utility. It's kind of like how Kayle works in the top lane. Senna is an insane late game champion that can also keep her allies alive. Finally, we want to make an honorable mention to Bard as well. Like Senna, he continues to scale infinitely with his charms. Although he doesn't gain bonus attack range, he gains some more damage, charges, and other bonuses as he continues to pick up more and more of those little guys. Aside from being a versatile support, he's a guy that can randomly 1v1 carries in the very late stages of the game once he's picked up enough of those chimes. Alright, that's going to wrap things up here, so take a look at the screen one more time to check out those support builds. Thanks so much for watching, guys. We really appreciate it. Make sure to check out ProGuides.com if you haven't already, because we have a ton of resources and coaches available to help you guys. Regardless, I'm grateful you guys take the time to watch our videos, and we're going to continue to do our best to help you guys level up your gameplay on Summoner's Rift. Now, until next time, good luck on the Rift, Summoners.